Hi everyone, I hope you're having a really nice long weekend with extra days off school. I wonder how many doors are in your house. I wonder how many are the ones that protect you from the outside, the ones that you close at night and lock to keep you safe. Why don't you go and check how many doors you've got just now, and then you can come back and watch the rest. Well, I wonder how many doors there were. And I wonder if you've got one or two doors, or even more maybe, that are to the outside of your house. Well, in Nehemiah chapter 6, we find that the walls have just been completed. Nehemiah is really pleased, they're looking good, they're nice and sturdy, they're completely restored, and they're going to protect the city. He and God's people have managed to do a good job with God's help. However, none of the gates are on yet. None of the doors to keep everybody safe inside at night have actually been put on yet. So there's gaps in the walls for them, but they're just ready to do that. Now, if you go back to Nehemiah chapter 3, you could maybe, with a grown-up, look through it and find out how many gates you hear mentioned. There are quite a few, so it was still quite a big job that they had to do. But Nehemiah's enemies, Sanballat and Tobiah and the other guys, they looked on and they saw how impressive the walls were looking, and they were not pleased. They were very annoyed. And they weren't ready to admit defeat. So they sent Nehemiah a letter, and they were hoping that they'd get him out of the city and do bad things to him. But Nehemiah got the letter asking them to go and meet them outside the city, and he knew it was a trick. And he said, no, I'm far too busy doing good stuff in this city. Because he was busy putting these gates on, and he knew that was something that would honour God. So the 4 letters that they wrote asking him to go and meet them, each time he said the same thing. Busy doing good stuff, I've no time to meet with you. But he also prayed and asked God to keep him strong when he was doing that. But they didn't take no for an answer, and there was a 5th letter came. And you know, this one, it wasn't nice at all. They said that Nehemiah had actually been planning to lead a rebellion with the people of Jerusalem. The reason they'd built the walls up was so they'd have a big safe city, so that they could rebel against the king, and so that they said Nehemiah wanted to be a king, and that actually he was going to get people to say that they'd heard God tell them that Nehemiah should be king, and that he wanted all that power. Well, that must have been very upsetting for Nehemiah to read that. And what was worse, they said, if you don't meet us, then I'm afraid the king's going to hear about those nasty, scandalous rumours. Well, Nehemiah prayed. He prayed and he said, none of that's true, God, just please help me. But he also replied and he said the same thing to Tobiah and Sanballat. He said, not a word of that's true. Not a word of it is true. And he just kept going. He didn't go and meet them. He wasn't going to be tricked into that or bribed into going to meet them in case they said things to the king about him. So he kept going and he trusted God, and he knew God wanted him to put these gates in and get the city really safe. And so that's what he did. And the gates were on and the city was safe. But while he was getting to that point, he'd gone to see a man who he'd kind of trusted. And the man said to him, I think they're going to come and catch you tonight. So we'll go and hide in the temple. We'll lock the doors of the temple, you and me, and you'll be nice and safe. You can hide away. And I wonder if Nehemiah thought for a wee minute, but he certainly didn't think for long, because he knew that God wouldn't want him to hide away. That wasn't the right thing to do. He hadn't done anything wrong. He was doing the right thing. He was doing what God wanted him to do. So he said he had a bit of a hunch that this guy might not have been, his friend after all. And it turned out this guy was working with Sanballat and Tobiah. And actually they were still trying to trick Nehemiah. They were trying to get him to go and hide in the temple so that they could then say, look at Nehemiah hiding in the temple. That's not the right thing to do. So Nehemiah was right to say no and to say, I've not done anything wrong, and I'm going to honour God and keep following him. I'm not going to hide away. So he did get to the end of the gates. The walls are done, the gates are complete. And at that point, he said, do you know, I don't want us to leave those gates not protected. We need to have someone keeping an eye on these gates all the time, because if we leave them open during the night and at different points of the day, people could break in, enemies could break in. So we don't want that to happen. So we'll need to set up shifts of people to keep an eye on the gates. So he did that. And then the other thing he did was choose people who were going to lead the city. He didn't want to be king. No matter what these other enemies said, he didn't want to be king. And what he did was he asked Hananiah and his own brother to look after the city. And you know why he asked them? Because they were godly and faithful. And he knew that they would honour God and that they would help the people to honour God and that they would do the right thing and make the right wise decisions. And so we find in chapter 7, Nehemiah's at the stage where he's looking around the city. He's seen the walls, he's seen the gates, it's looking great. But he looks inside the city and he realises it's actually quite empty. Because when the city was attacked and the walls crumbled down in the first place, lots of people were scattered, just like himself. And so what had happened was they were all living elsewhere. So to get them back, he knew that he would need to ask the leaders of each family to come and sign up first to get houses. Because if they came and they were leading by an example, they were leading by a good example, then the other members of the family would follow. So they did. And all the leaders came back and they all followed, their families all followed, and people started moving back into Jerusalem. And they even had a bunch of priests and Levites, you can ask your mum and dad about them, and temple servants and singers. So not only did they have lots of people in the city, but they had people that would be able to help them to honour and worship God and follow him well as well, and look after the temple. So that's what we find when we finish the story today. The city's looking good. It's starting to have a hustle and bustle that it used to have in the past. And they've even brought all their donkeys and their horses and their camels. So it would have been a noisy, busy, maybe a wee bit smelly city. And things were looking good. And just at the very end of the chapter, all the people go into the square, they meet together and they say, let's get the book of the law of Moses, and let's have a look at it. Because they wanted to honour God. They wanted to put him right in the middle of the start of moving back into the city. And they wanted to know how he would want them to live. And that's how we leave the story today. It's nice to be able to leave it on a really positive note, isn't it? So all the hardships that had happened, it came good in the end because God had asked them to do it and they were doing what God had asked them to do. Nehemiah was honouring God and leading the people to do the same. So I wondered if you could talk as a family, and the first question I thought you might want to answer. Nehemiah, a few times when they were trying to trick him and they were trying to put him off and trying to stop him from finishing these walls and the gates, Nehemiah said, no, I'm not going to go, I'm not going to get tricked, I'm not going to stop because I know God wants me to do this. He's asked me to do this. I'm honouring him. I know that he would be honoured by what I'm doing, and this is what I'm going to keep doing. And I wonder how he knew it was what God wanted him to do, and how he knew how to live to honour God. So maybe you could talk about that. How do you get to know God well enough to know what he would want you to do and how he would want you to live? And here's another question for you. Nehemiah prayed a lot, and it's good for us to do that. What else can we do to keep us going when things get tough? Wonder if you can come up with some ideas together in the family. I've got a couple of things for you to do as well today. I've sent you a jigsaw puzzle and I've sent you some instructions with that so you can get started on that, making a jigsaw, so you can take it apart and build it up again like the walls. You could maybe give it to someone as a challenge to do. The other thing I thought you could do is make some edible gates. I'm thinking twiglets or breadsticks or maybe matchmakers. I don't know how you're going to stick them together. You'll need to think about that. Maybe even spaghetti and marshmallows, something like that. I wonder I think if I was going to do it, maybe I would make one from Kit Kat fingers. That would be a delicious cake, wouldn't it? Whatever you decide to do, before you eat it, can you take a picture of it and then send it to me or put it on the Facebook chat? Because I would love to see what you come up with, because I think you could be very creative. And the last thing I thought we could do is a prayer activity. We've been thinking about family and friends, church family and the Knightswood community when we've been praying over the last few weeks, haven't we? And today I thought you could do some praying for boys and girls in other parts of the world. And you're about to see a little video that helps you to come up with some good ideas of how you can practically help boys and girls in another part of the world by just showing them how much they're loved, showing how much God loves them and how much you value them, so they realise how precious and special they are, how unique they are and how loved they are. Now we do it most years. You might have had a chance to do this a few years in a row, and each year we try and get more and more, but it's the shoe boxes. And as you're making it up this year and as you're thinking about who you're making your boxes for, why don't you pray for the person that's going to receive it and ask the box to be blessed as you're building it up. Well, I'll leave you to watch the video now, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your weekend, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.
All around the world there are families who are not as lucky as we are. They don't live in big houses, and many have to go without electricity and running water. Christmas time can be hard for them, as they often can't afford to buy presents for their children or relatives. Gimbolia is one of many towns in Romania where we at Knightswood Care try to do what we can to help. We've made many great friends there and help where we can with their problems. We've set up after-school activities at the Tolita Cum Centre, where the local children get to play games and learn and get a nice warm meal. We love to try and give those local families a merrier Christmas by providing presents to those that can't afford it themselves. But to do this, we need your help. We're asking you to help by filling an empty shoebox with useful bits and bobs that they might not have. We're looking for toiletries like soap, toothbrushes and shampoo, stationery like pens, pencils and colouring books, useful household items like candles, tools and kitchen utensils, clothes like scarves and gloves, and toys for girls and boys. Remember, we're providing gifts for the whole family and all age ranges. Once you've filled your shoebox, just deliver it to your local collection point and we'll make sure it makes its way to the people who need it most.